Maybe they'll wander in. Now maybe this is our whole assembled company. Let's see here. I think I'll get started with a short story that you probably all know. This is called Open Sky. I had washed out of the aviator program and would soon be discharged from the Navy when the burn started in my shoulder blades. Maureen was understanding. "It's their loss," she would say as she laid dinner out. "You would have been a wonderful pilot." Mostly I poked at the green beans and shrugged, but every once in a while she would change tactics. "Have you got something else in mind?" she would ask in sympathy voice. That was my cue to grunt noncommittally and lumber outside to stare at the darkening sky. In the first few weeks, she'd come outside to sit with me in the silence, and she'd sip at the scotch. I gulped. It wasn't long before the outside silence moved inside. She stopped pouring me scotch, and I sat alone. My shoulders hurt from top to bottom. I was reading too much Greek mythology, maybe. I'd stare at Atlas with the world on my shoulders and reach for the Glenfiddich. She thought she'd hidden. Long into the night, I found the story of Icarus, and my shoulder blades burned. I tried to ignore it. I took aspirin, took a shower, scratched, rubbed, passed out. I woke up naked in the hallway with an empty bottle in one hand and a pair of long mottled feathers in the other. Maureen was frying breakfast in the kitchen. "You have to stop this, Jake," I grunted. "I mean it. You took a hit, I know, but it's time to pick yourself up and move on." That's about the time I started lingering around runway 7. I'd park the car and lie on the hood and watch those big birds soar over me. The vibrations cooled the throb in my shoulders. One night Maureen said, "Have you been keeping birds?" "No. Why?" "There are feathers everywhere. All over the shower, the couch, the bed." I shrugged, then winced. "What's wrong with your back?" I grunted and went outside to stare at the sky. The classifieds began to show up beside my bacon and eggs. I couldn't explain why. They made me sick. At night in bed I held her, and she cried and told me she didn't understand. She was so thin in my arms. I remember so well the way she sobbed against me, her heart like a trapped bird. "I love you," I heard myself whisper, ignoring the pitched agony of my back. Night passed, staring into the fading velvet perfection of the open sky. The sun was burning pink fires into the dying haze. Crying into infinity, the ululating currents and diving jet streams plummeted and ascended and wound in the perfect freedom without obstacle. It broke inside me. My shoulders cracked and contorted. Doubled over, I shrieked, groaned, and thrashed. Great wings and bright tore through the ragged flesh of my shoulder blades and beat bloody feathers against the glass door to the backyard. Shivering and pink, my wet, feathered wings encircled me in my pain. I can't be sure how long she stood there and watched me, inching closer, watching slow, labored breaths as I bled on the white carpet. When I looked up, she was weeping. Her eyes were red, cheeks flushed and wet. But there was something beautiful and unfamiliar in the way she held her shoulders, beyond the gentle girl I'd almost let love me. She pulled the sliding glass door open, and I felt the first rush and tickle of free air on my naked wings. I felt a delicious stretch ripple through me, knocking over the crockery and lampshades as I shivered with delight. The remains of my shirt fell to the floor, a ragged leaving among the feathers. Maureen watched me as I crept through the threshold and beat against the roiling, building wind with hungry wings. I was airborne. Turning, whirling, boiling in the everything, spinning, dancing, diving, turning, free, exultant, bouncing, boisterous, I crested high and tucked in the open space, where I could swim in the perfection of touching nothing but the wind. The wings, my wings, were dove-like, wide and high-arching on my back, with white, warm feathers. Over deserts I soared, climbed and perched on mountain summits. I tipped my toes in the waves of the open sea. I tasted the wind where my lungs had to strain for air, and came to know the pleasure of solitude, circling, moving monuments in ice. Sometimes I think of Maureen, still weeping in the half-light. Thank you. So, maybe a bit of poetry to wash that down. Let's see. This one is called The Flower Eaters. The hungry ones eat dandelions, the thirsty ones milkweed. The savage ones eat roses whole and don't care where they feed. The lonely ones eat all alone in patches long forgot, and after hours eat jasmine flowers and sad forget-me-nots. So, my wife coined this phrase, and I liked it so much I made a poem out of it. It was called Working Class God. A working class God who can't lay languorous, long, lucky, opulent in Olympus, oiled, orgasmic, with work waiting, winnowing in the world, fighting fallow fields with blessings, blighting, barren, baleful. A working class God. He's no Zeus or Apollo, but beautiful enough. A working class God. And this is actually, the poem is also the title of this collection. It's called Apophis Over Coffee. And Apophis is the Greek name for the Egyptian god who is a snake, and he's supposed to swallow the sun at the end of the world. So that makes this poem make a little more sense if you know that.
At the end, when the world is over?
Yeah, at the very end of the world, this is how the end will come, as this giant snake will swallow the sun. In the morning there is no sun, and nothing will serve. The coffee is yesterday's coffee, and swallows like darkness, swallowing in the morning. And this one's called Maru, and I wrote it thinking about, after the tragedy in Japan and so many ships and debris came across the ocean, it was just empty, floating and found hither and yon all over the ocean. So this is sort of what I had in mind when I wrote this. Across the sea, the empty ship shifted under sheets of rain and slid astride shoals through storms and slow, sure ice. Across the sea, the empty ship shifted, listed, slipped, and sank beneath the waves, beneath the waves, beneath the waves, across the sea. And this is called Nix. Of a night I can hear the flowers closing and grains of sand shifting one at a time under the wind. Of a night I can hear water settling drop by drop over the whispering edge of morning. And this one I wrote. We went to the Sutro baths, and it was really beautiful. It was grass and flowers, and then all of a sudden, nothing. Just water. There's this cliff, and it just right over the edge. So that's sort of inspired this. It's called the lying down place. There must be a space at the edge of tinkling glass and church bells, an outer edge where the sound is almost, but not quite, gone. There must be a space at the edge of sounds, voices, where the rills and fringes just tickle the beginnings of tall grass and fall away. And this one's called 1 Corinthians, which you're probably familiar with. It's that passage in the Bible that starts, love is patient, love is kind, so on. I tell my daughter love is caring about others more than ourselves, but when she leaves the house, love is a steel ribcage, constricting. This is called The Knitting Women. This is about my wife and my mother-in-law at a concert. I'm with the knitting women. Their fingers know a foreign language. What use are italics to the Italians? The knitting women knit. The knowing is the doing. And among them I am unlettered.
Do you only have books? You're a poet. You're not a prose fiction.
I do also have some prose, and I will be reading some of that. I think as soon as I'm done with this poem, I'll get back into some more.
But you started out as a poet. Is that my understanding?
I don't know which one I started doing first.
You got published as books of poetry, right?
Well, in fact, I published two of these at the same time, but I really did work on both.
Both poetry books, or
Poetry and prose. But actually, I'm saving time at the end, and then there can be questions, so I'm just going to dive right back in. This is called If Poetry Were a Zoo, and I had some trepidation about writing this one because it definitely references a lot of other material, but I like the way it ended up, so I hope you do. This is called If Poetry Were a Zoo. If poetry were a zoo, you could wake up and in the early morning's light catch the trolley to the foggy edge of town. You could pay a dime to slide past the kiosk where Whitman waits with wishes where eyes should be, thumbing through Homer like a long-lost lover, and there in the dawn's pale gloaming you could see the rhythm and meter stretch and yawn, waking to sneer at Kerouac. Caged and under glass, etherized like a patient on a table, the fragments of Sappho would accuse you for the price of admission. You burn me. Angel-headed hipsters would sway in cages of their own making, and dark ladies would bark candy and popcorn with eyes that are nothing like the sun. There is no red wheelbarrow at the zoo, to the consternation of those who can remember the white chickens and how much depended on having it. But in the Serpent exhibit, in the Milton section, some graffiti. No ideas, but in things. This place used to be a paradise. Disgruntled beasts, howling, unrecognizable, but too dangerous to be let free, would hurl anthologies at the bars of their prison cells, and later, when the moon rises, they sing za poems to the darkness. In the room, women come and go, talking about the poems of Poe. But in the tunnel, in the night, a button is a button is a button is a fight. And the zookeepers have all gone mad or else cannot be stopped from weeping and tearing their clothing. No one is sure why. No one has asked. The rosebuds are picked and picked and picked. No virgins left to make much of time. No petals left on the wet black bough. When they close the gates, the one that says abandon all hope, etc., is locked and bolted and locked, and only the lonely lost lovers wander among the enclosures looking for something, they know not what. If you visited the zoo, if the zoo existed, if poetry were a zoo, who would be mad and caged, and who free?
I like that one a lot, actually. I do have I have one question to ask, if you don't mind.
Sure.
The buttons. That's the one reference that I'm sort of struggling with. Is that Gertrude Stein?
That's the one.
Yeah, Tender Buttons.
That's the one. Gertrude.
I love the mention of Allen Ginsberg's angel-headed hipsters. That's great.
Thank you.
That made me sort of laugh a little bit. I like that.
I think you need it up front.
Oh, gotcha.
So, that's a little longer. I think I'll read Sun Go Down. That's when she left, the old man said as he spat a black wad of spit off the edge of the porch. His lip, fat with dip, pushed out the gray edges of his whiskers. He wore a worn pair of Levi's and a blue denim shirt. "So what'd you do?" asked John Gussman, his oldest friend, pushing back his cowboy hat. He had a round, red face that managed to be friendly and serious all at once. "Hell, Johnny, what's to do?" said Eli. Woman says she don't want you no more, you let her go. What about this other fellow? What's his name? Mackie? What about him? You didn't go see him? I might have made a visit. It was nigh on a week since she'd gone till I figured she wasn't coming back. You always were slow to get the hint, said John. I suppose I always was. So what happened? I guess it was around midnight. I'd been at the bottle, took that old over-under out from the den and set to cleaning it. It was rain that night, hard rain, thick like it gets and darkens the dark. I got to thinking about them nights in the boonies when I was younger. Kids, really. Jungle nights. Tried not to think on it, but the rain and the scattergun must have set it in my head. Then I was walking slow in the rain. I saw this light, red light, glowing down at me from above like a neon sign above the gates of hell. Where'd you walk to? Ronnie's bar. You walked to Ronnie's bar in the dark in the middle of a damn rainstorm with a shotgun? I guess I'd been stewing. I walked in wearing just my jeans, boots, and a wet collar shirt. No coat. Must have looked like a half-drowned dog. Or a devil sprung from the sea. Wonder you didn't catch your death, Eli. Well, there he was, her new man, Mackie. Eli spat as he said the last word. He was sitting at the bar with a beer in his hand. He saw me right off and turned gray. I must have looked the sight. You know, he's nigh on 48, but they say he's a fighter. He tried to get up. Maybe I'd been thinking too much of the jungle ways. I closed with him fast and sent that scattergun club style right across his face, broadside. Sent him off his stool, and he caught the floor with his other cheekbone. I never heard about Mackie going to the hospital over this. I don't guess you would have. He went all the way down to Valdosta to get patched up so folks wouldn't hear about it. Swore everybody in the bar to secrecy. Didn't want to advertise he got himself beat by a rickety old man, drunk and half crazy. Kind of funny, really. He didn't care what people would say when he stole that same old man's wife. Well, they were on me then. Earl took the over-under and had Larry watch the bar while he drove me home. Earl? Jake and Anna's boy? Yeah. Good kid. Yeah, I liked the kid. Made me feel old when he told me he'd hit 40. 40. No, he can't be more than 30. Hell. Eli looked at John and grinned without letting it touch his eyes. We're old man. John chuckled and took a swig of beer. Eli spat. You're still thinking about that old war these nights? Asked John. Try not to. You? Some nights, said John quietly. They were silent then, watching the defiant orange colors of fearless afternoon shift more and more toward the shades of night. So I guess you got an earful from Jolene. Boy, howdy, Eli chuckled. What'd she do? Came in here howling like a wildcat, talking all kinds of law and brimstone. Told me she'd married too old a man, that I'd gone senile to be such a damn fool. I guess marrying a woman so much younger was asking for trouble. Eli scratched his grizzled neck with wrinkled, calloused hands and growled. Maybe, said John. You want another beer? Got whiskey? Yeah, said Eli. Join me? Yeah. Eli stood slowly, easing out of the rocking chair with a series of clicks and pops, then stepped into the house, the screen door slamming behind him. He returned with a clinking, tinkling pair of tumblers and a half-empty bottle of Jack Daniels. As he poured out, he said, I guess that's why them two decided to leave town. They got nothing much to hold them here anymore. Mackie's folks are dead, kids are grown. Jolene never liked this old town. Where'd they go? I don't know. She came to say goodbye, said she's going west somewhere. She'll live a whole new life, start again. A woman her age can do that. They each drank in silence for a long moment, watching the light of day fade and listening to the cicadas slip into their nighttime rhythms. What's it mean when a woman you thought was going to be yours till the end just up and leaves? Eli asked no one in particular. John said nothing. Means you'll die alone, said Eli. That's what it means. A man is better off to die alone than with strangers and snakes, said John. Eli nodded and sipped his whiskey, the scents of sour mash and jasmine mixing in the southern night. The last of the light was dying now, leaving long purple shadows that dragged themselves into the black woods. But it felt good to hit that son of a bitch, said John. In the dark, they each began to laugh. So I think I'll go back to poetry and then another story. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Josh.
Good to see you.
All right, let's see here. So this is from Accidental Existential, which is a book of poetry. And I just selected a few that I like. I read a poem by Charles Bukowski called So You Want to Be a Writer, and it made me very angry, as Bukowski will sometimes do. So I wrote him back. This is called a response to Charles Bukowski, So You Want to Be a Writer. If you ever wondered if you could, write it. If you ever liked to play with words on a page just to see what it looked like, or spoke them out because you wanted to hear the sound of them, write. If you tinkered and bled and sweat trying to find the words, just a few words, write them down, write them out, write them. No matter how long it takes you, even if you started at 3 or at 45, write it out, send it off. It doesn't matter what the experts say, your teachers, your friends. Write what you want to write. Say what's in you to say. Bang out the message until the ribbon breaks. This is called Notre Dame. Outside Notre Dame I sat and wept beside the angels and did not know why, but that stone and light and time had been wrought by people I would never know. And quietly, believers navigate past tourists like me to attend a mass from which I can only feel excluded. And this I wrote, it's called Patriot, and I wrote at a time when there was a hurricane coming up pretty near to Washington, D.C., that area. And I thought about the Tomb of the Unknowns. So I wrote this. It is easy to be flippant so far from Mount Vernon, and glib as one turns away from the beaches of Normandy and Iwo Jima. Comfortable to bark like a cynic, the less one is put in mind of Arlington Cemetery, and the men who walk there, rain or shine. Oh, I like this one. Drinking water. This is called Winter Song. In the North Woods long ago, one day it was too cold to snow. A wolf pack hunted, hungry, raging, and came upon a cabin, aging. In the North Woods long ago, one day it was too cold to snow. The old man living there had fire, and solitude his one desire. He heard them come from far away, and knew them near at close of day. The old man living there had fire, and solitude his one desire. They circled long outside the light, and howled against his door that night. The old man waited, silent, still, for cold and night to do their will. They circled long outside the light, and howled against his door that night. When springtime came after the thaw, a hunting party came and saw a cabin torn by tooth and claw, and what was left was only bone in the forest all alone. When springtime came after the thaw, a hunting party came and saw. And the title of the book comes from this poem called Accidental Existential. This actually happened. But I thought it was a good moment for a poem, so I wrote it. Today at work, a book came in called True Love, written by a Buddhist monk in the 21st century. I was put to a choice, for I had two shelves, fiction or nonfiction. Suddenly you're faced with an existential conundrum. This is called Kelpie, and sort of in a romantical type fashion, so forgive me. While sitting by an emerald lake, the sun was going down. I saw the line of water break, but did not hear a sound. A lady from the green beneath stood upon the waves, atop her head a seaweed wreath, her voice and manner grave. She called to me across the space, a man on shore, a maid on sea. With haunting song and haunting grace, her spell enchanted me. I came to her with open arms, she kissed me in the deep. There I died of woman's charms, as man slips into a sleep. And for those who don't know, a Kelpie is like a sea spirit, I think like Scottish in origin, and they would sort of like a siren, but for your lakes and rivers. So this is called Love Increaseth. Listen, it's not like what they tell you. Love increases gravity, holds you down to night shifts at all-day diners, compresses paychecks into mortgage payments, baby shoes, throws appointments like thick ropes over your day, named Little League, ballet recital, date night, Sunday dinner, sends you staggering and bleary-eyed into the living room Christmas Day, and keeps you scared vertical until you know your loved ones are safe. You know, you could be cresting the hill that reveals at last the splendor of Machu Picchu, or lounging lazy at the last empty beach on the far side of nowhere. You could be accepting an award for your novel, finally finished. But, like Abraham, you would have to sacrifice your love at the altar of these distant dreams. Oh, Abraham, stay your hand. This is called In Defense of Ruin. I love to see a parking lot being reclaimed by the weeds when it becomes defiant of asphalt and stone. The yellow dandelions push up through the cracks with joined voices of silent, patient rebellion. And this is called Mars. The red planet, warlike, has no wars. Never did. All the invasions staged so far were staged on the blue marble. Martians are not present here, or they are well hidden, wary, wise perhaps, leery of the blue planet, warlike. And this was fun to write. This is called An Open Letter from Old Sparky, the electric chair at Sing Sing. It was never personal. I'm a machine. That doesn't mean everybody deserved it, but everybody had it coming. And really, what else was I going to do? Not much fun at dinner parties. You wouldn't want me at Macy's around Christmas time. I do one thing very well, and I'm not sorry. I wouldn't be sorry even if I were, because people aren't like this. I am what I do. People can be accountants, hate the boss and quit, become beauticians, meet a beefy butcher named Larry, get married, get pregnant, have babies, move to Levittown, get drunk one night, stab Larry in the heart with a carving knife, and end up, well, right here. Me, all I can do is wait for the next one.
Nothing personal.
So let's see. I have a couple other short stories for you. There's one called Stormy Weather, which I enjoyed writing, and it's a bit long for us here, I think. So I'm just going to read a few pages, and if you like it, you'll have to buy the book and find out how it ends. So, shh, go sit down, honey. Okay. So I have an epigram here that is a famous poem by Robert Herrick called To the Virgins to Make Much of Time, which you may have heard referenced in another poem I just read. Gather ye rosebuds while ye may, old time is still a-flying, and this same flower that smiles today, tomorrow will be dying. The glorious lamp of heaven, the sun, the higher he's a-getting, the sooner will his race be run, and nearer he's to setting. That age is best which is the first, when youth and blood are warmer, but being spent the worse and worst times still succeed the former. Then be not coy, but use your time, and while ye may go merry, for having lost but once your prime, you may forever tarry. Cheryl is talking to me. I've had it, she says. I've had it. I can't do this anymore. My eyes are open. What? I get off the couch. What time is it? Had I slept? The morning news was on with that weather girl. Wait, Cheryl's leaving? Cheryl, I say, what do you... No, she says. I realize she has her suitcase next to her. She's turning to the door. Quick, say something. No what? You can't just say no to a question that asks for an explanation. It's unconstitutional. It's un-American. Then I say, what about your toothbrush? I already got my toothbrush. Her hand is on the doorknob. She's wearing that brown pantsuit I never liked. Why is she wearing that? What did I do? What didn't I do? I'll do it, or stop doing it. Or both. No, Colin, it's too late. I just need some space. She's got on a cold expression. I can't read her, and it's scaring me. I put my hand gently on the door as she opens it. She doesn't yank away, but she doesn't let me close it either. Why do women always say that? If astrophysicists are to be believed, there's absolutely tons of space in the universe. Why compound the abundance? She cracks a smile, but stops it before it reaches her eyes. She's got that dimple. I want to brush it with the backs of my fingers. I love that dimple. Don't take that dimple away, I want to say. Well, can I make you some eggs? We could talk about things, or just look at each other. Could be fun. Or awkward. No, Colin, I need to go. She turns and opens the door. I want to stroke her long blonde hair as she turns away from me. I reach out, not quite touching, and notice that same long blonde hair is curled. She never curls her hair. Wait a minute, I say. She stops, incredibly. There's a lurch in my stomach. What's his name? What? She says. She turns and fixes me with those blue eyes. She's guilty, and she knows it. What is the guy's name? I ask. Even to me, my voice sounds quiet. You never do that to your hair, and you're wearing that pantsuit. His name is Owen. She's looking right through me as she says it. It hurts because she seems to mean it to hurt. Now say something cool. Owen? Really? I hate him. She looks at me like I'm a petulant child. Maybe I am. I have to go, she says, moving out the door with her suitcase. I stand there in the doorway and watch her walk out of the shadows our eaves cast over the concrete walkway and into the morning sun. It catches her hair and makes it shine gold. I want to call out. I want to say come back. I want to grab her and tell her this isn't right. This isn't how we're supposed to end things. I stand and watch her walk away. I say nothing. Chapter 2, Monday. It is 8:30, and I am coaxing the Dodge, whom I have named Marmaduke, toward the office. Tom Petty is on the radio. I am alone. Cheryl has not called. I have eaten everything in the house that was microwavable. All morning I have been wondering how many generations of workmen lived their whole lives and died to make the Great Pyramid at Giza. What monuments to greatness will my generation lay claim to? I park and walk into work. My company designs and troubleshoots software. I am a cog in the wheel. Walking in the fluorescent light, I eye the fluorescent lighting with deep suspicion. Fluorescent light bulbs are a product designed in hell. My boss, Sidney, is waiting at my cubicle and looking at his watch. He is enormously fat and hugely, freakishly tall. I imagine him as an angry and powerfully mediocre Santa Claus, but fascist. Deep in my heart, I know he is an ogre in a polyester suit. Colin, he says, it's 9 a.m. in the morning. I want to point out that you really can't have a 9 a.m. in the afternoon, but I say nothing. Sidney waits for a response. Yes, I say finally, although mentally I know it is now 9:01. If you're not 10 minutes early, you're 10 minutes late, he says. In my mind's eye, I can imagine little training camps in the Ozarks where middle management material is drilled day in and day out to speak and breathe nonsensical platitudes and business credos. I imagine those who do not learn their lessons sufficiently are placed in solitary confinement in freezing or sweltering conditions until they can prove their loyalty to their corporate masters, possibly by doing unspeakably depraved acts of salesmanship over the phone. When I come back from my dream, my boss sniffles and snorts and has waddled off, leaving the smell of aspen, aftershave, and cigarettes. I sit down in my cubicle rife with painstakingly clipped but yellowing Garfield cartoons of the last 3 years. I think I like Garfield because I imagine he has the perfect life. He eats, naps, wakes up, and eats. This, as I see it, is a highly refined form of existence. The cartoons are all I have to show for my time at Direct Software Solutions Incorporated. I have a theory that down in the basement is an experimental soul-eroding pump that leaches the capacity for independent thought and possibly joy from the employees who unwittingly die a little every day they work here. If I close my eyes, I can hear the pump humming and malevolent far below. Hey, Colin, it's Bradley. Not Brad, not B-Money, Bradley. Hey, Brad, I say. He grimaces. Bradley, he says under his breath. There is an awkward silence. I consider it an advantage that I am never in a hurry to fill up silence. If you pay attention, you'll notice this is rare in people my age. Right, so what's up, I finally say. I was wondering if you wanted to go do some frisbee golf this weekend. Oh yeah, can't. I have plans this weekend, but thanks. I say this automatically and without thinking as I boot up my computer. Whatever other pleasantries that are exchanged happen mechanically, and he too leaves. I spend a moment wondering what the corporate ladder of the future will look like and if there will ever be room in the higher echelons of business for frisbee golfers. I put on my headphones and deploy my ergonomic keyboard. I remove my shoes and place my feet on the automated footrest and massager. I begin working through the lines of code on our next product, a piece of software which will tell the client when their computer system is becoming obsolete. The software is already obsolete. Not for the first time, I wonder what I am doing with my life. Then I'm thinking about Owen. I know that Owen is interesting in ways that I can never be. He has a powerful car that openly humiliates simple cars like my Dodge, if ever they are caught beside one another in a parking lot. Owen and Cheryl have a deep understanding of one another, and he knows things about her intuitively that years of couples therapy would never reveal to me. He is handsome